Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I am Brad, here with Bob.
Hey.
Guardians of the Galaxy came out this year. Guardians of the Galaxy, I feel like, was announced this year.
It came out really quick.
It came out really quick. So, Guardians of the Galaxy is such a weird game for me. I am a giant, ridiculous, huge fan of the MCU, everything day one, 7 p.m. Thursdays for 90% of these movies. Love it, love it, love it. Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite. Read a bunch of the comics, love it. Saw that initial trailer and went, I'm good. Literally, the only Insomniac Spider-Man, the crappy Avengers game, all that stuff, in. Saw that and was just like, you know what? Nah, I'm out on this one. It was the one piece of mainstream Marvel stuff that I did not instantly buy day one or go see day one.
That one's weird too, because I actually, of all the Marvel stuff, I don't like. I mean, I kind of like. I'm okay on Marvel stuff. There's stuff I like. Most of it I find mediocre. But I did like Guardians of the Galaxy quite a bit. And I had kind of the same, I'm not gonna get this fight, but I got the same. I had the kind of the similar reaction to it. And I think it was the, and it's not coming off. I think a lot of people like it's coming off Avengers as a bad game, but I think it more came off as Avengers characters looked kind of weird, and therefore when you see Guardians characters, anytime you bring a live action version of a Marvel character to life, they're just going to immediately be compared to the MCU because an MCU is already pretty comic booky. So if you bring something like that's just what you would do is you would make them these characters. So we already had these characters. So they just looked a little bit off, and I think that's immediately off-putting. And it turned out a lot of the part of this game that's really good is not something of spending 2 minutes with a character. It's spending 10 minutes with a character. It's spending 20 minutes with a character, which is not great to show for things. And I totally agree with you. I was like, I was not into it. It was weird seeing it because I was like, the pedigree of the studio is awesome because I do like the Deus Ex. I do like the Deus Ex reboot stuff. Is really good. Yeah. And so when you're seeing this, you're like, what went wrong? There's just something went wrong, and then you play it,
and that's my thought when I saw that first trailer. Is you just have that somebody's got their hands on this. Some big suit is messing with this game and pointing them. And as you start to play it, kind of like you said, it's just not a game. I don't know how you could have sold this game because so much of it is spending time with these characters. So much of it is seeing oh my god, that writing in the trailer, that's kind of good, but okay, whatever, that seems fun, whatever, I don't know, don't quite know how that fits in context. Once you get the context, you get the full scenes, you get everything, you need that to really understand how good this game is. It's a game that I don't think you can sell well just by here's a 3-minute chunk.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem they ran into, even with combat. I think as combat evolves in this, and as you're doing more things, and as you're getting more used to it, and it's getting more fluid for you, it doesn't show well just because it doesn't seem like there's much going on.
Yeah. It's weird. I feel like there's scenes in this that you could have showed that would have made it really cool. But I think going in with those low expectations, though, that when I started playing this, and I mean, we both got it on the Black Friday sale a month after it came out. It was $25, which is warning bells going off. That's not a normal thing at all. It's like, okay, well, reviews are saying this is better than you think, and it's like, all right, I gave it a try, and I don't even really like Marvel stuff, and I just remember as soon as I booted the game and the intro doesn't start where I started where I would think it would start, and I was like, oh, this might actually be a good game. And as you're playing, it's like, is this actually a triple A game? Oh, is this game actually doing something clever? It feels like a secret triple A game. And if your marketing's doing a bad job, if you're discovering that this is oh, actually this is super high budget and a really creative game.
Yeah, I don't even know and again, I think there's other stuff, but it does delve so much into the characters, which I think is something that is a really interesting take, because to me this felt closer to Mass Effect than to the new Avengers game, because it's a lot of just go wander around the ship, talk with people, see what's going on. You have dialogue choices that probably don't affect much but feel important at the time, and you get some really good comeback dialogue from them too, where oh, I picked this thing 5 minutes ago, and it might not have shifted the whole entire narrative, but it definitely shifted the way that Rocket interacted with his character based on me kind of being a dick to him 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's fun. I think that's actually one of the big things that I think I noticed, maybe something to talk about a little bit, is the dialogue system, because I think you're saying this game shares a lot with Mass Effect. I also thought it shared a lot with just Telltale games,
Yeah.
where I think this game sort of realized that the cool thing about Telltale games is making your decisions, but in actuality, there's maybe 5 big decisions you make in a Telltale game,
Oh yeah.
and this one's like, well, we can maybe fit 5 big decisions into an action game. Like, you know, there are some big decisions you make, but there's maybe only 5, but a lot of what you're saying is just this dialogue back and forth. So it's cool kind of seeing that integration of like Telltale into it, and which is really makes sense for Guardians. Maybe not that specific Telltale game, which I know exists and was terrible.
Terrible's too far. Terrible's too far.
Yeah.
It was okay. Again,
But
consume everything Marvel. Played that one right away when it came out.
sure. Sure, but I like what you're saying, like with the dialogue, because I think when you're making the dialogue, when you're making these kind of quips back and forth, it was like I actually cared about what my character was saying, even though I knew it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Like I think when it's like when Rocket makes a smart comment, you're like, I'm gonna make a smart comment back. And sometimes I like that because you knew that like some of these decisions did have like major repercussions, that you could be a smartass sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not gonna say the nice thing. I'm gonna say kind of the smartassy thing. Maybe I'm gonna agree with the guy who's being kind of a jerk. And it was fun being able to play like that space swagger sort of thing with the dialogue decisions. And I guess I wasn't expecting dialogue. I guess I wasn't expecting dialogue decisions at all, much less like a bunch of them all the time, even during like not combat, but like gameplay segments. Like they just pop up sort of randomly, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with this whole game. I think you could sum it up is just everything that happened was not what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the fun of this is that it's one of those things where maybe you intentionally show something bad because you just get such a weird impression. You're like, it's just gonna be this generic action game. I'm playing as Star Wars. I've just got buttons and cooldowns to do random moves, and like I'm just walking around this. I think the plan that they showed was just kind of was a dark color. Like it had some cool art to it, but it definitely was not the best environment out of the entire game that they showed out. So it's just kind of like, okay, and then you go there and you're like, wow, this is really pretty. Wow, this dialogue really hits well. Wow, okay, the combat's actually kind of fun and kind of clever the way that you use the Guardians. Like, it actually does help. They all each, have a unique portion of combat that they're hitting in terms of, like, stagger bars, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It does so many things that I was not expecting that I think that's part of why I enjoyed it, because I definitely wasn't expecting this to be one of my favorite games of the year when I picked it up for $25 a month after it come out, because I saw a few decent review scores.
Yeah, it feels like it's kind of firing on all cylinders, because I think the one thing that it's like, well, first of all, we talked the dialogue, which is really good. I think the art direction is just utterly just incredible. Oh, yeah. Like I played Artful Escape, big fan of Artful Escape, big fan of Psychonauts. Like I think that it was weird that Guardians of the Galaxy didn't get kind of a nod. I think the thing that we're seeing more and more with like next gen games is like people inspired by certain artists, and Guardians is clearly inspired by there's this, I forgot the artist's name is, but there's these trippy 1970s spaceship drawings, but they're drawings that just like you would just never see in a normal sci-fi movie. You need your big gray ships, you need with like a lot of pointy guns in this one, but this one's like a very colorful galaxy, very colorful, which I really, really enjoyed. I just feel like I don't really see that, and much less like a really well detailed one. And the environments just look really, really crazy and fun. I mean, every location you go to, I was like excited to go to, because like there's just the detail and the weirdness of the landscape. I just really, really loved. The ship looks like insanely detailed, which I thought was really fun, because it's a place you keep returning back to. There's some other areas you return to a few times that are just really, really packed with detail. And that's why I started seeing, that was the thing that's kind of surprised me. It's like, oh, this is like a secret AAA game, because you just could not pack this much detail without a big budget. So it was fun just kind of going, it's like, oh, that's what this game is. Oh, that's what this game is. But I just really had to call it the art style, because I just loved the art style on top of everything else as well. And that's kind of like a big selling point for me. And this is something I, again, wasn't expecting from out of this game.
And I think it's one of those things where, like you said, it's all very creative, and it all plays differently than your expectations outside of the stuff that is specifically Marvel. Nova ships look like Nova ships. Like, outside of those things that are like, this is what this is, everything has that kind of cool creative touch to it, whether it's the color palette, whether it's the design, just even some of like the alien people you run into and walk across. Like, it's not your, I feel like you normally in sci-fi go either like slight off-kilter human or like slightly that, and it's just, they're all fairly unique, and you fought some cool creatures. Just everything is so well done.
Yeah.
I have such a hard time thinking about this game, because it's like my expectations for this like were just so like just whatever, I'll get to it when it's $10 someday. It's probably gonna be blah. But I do think we
Some
just
of
need to take a sec. I
oh,
do
sorry, keep
think we
going.
just need to take a second to talk about the Guardians, because the
Sure.
way that they interact with each other is really like deep. Like there's some like
Yeah.
emotional moments in this game, especially they delve into backstories and stuff and deal a little bit with Gamora and Thanos. They deal a lot with where Rocket came from and how he's affected by that. And then even some of the minor characters, Nikki, who you meet fairly
Yes.
early on, who becomes a major character, just kind of out of nowhere is this really important character, and they handle her relationship with Star Lord and with her mom and with a couple other characters just so well. The characters are just all built up in a way where each and every one of them has one or two just major important scenes where you're like,
Hmm.
this is so cool, I'm getting so much from this character, and it's such a good moment. And those just kind of come randomly throughout the game.
Yeah, I think the thing too is just like the amount of dialogue that's in this is that even if a character's not having their big moment, they've still been talking for like 20 minutes straight. I
Yeah.
the people are talking about this 12-hour game for about 10 hours, maybe 11 hours of it. Just there's just constant chitter chatter, which can sometimes seem like it would come off as annoying, but it is neat. It kind of has that feeling I felt with like Persona, where you just feel like you're spending so much time with these characters that you really get to kind of understand them at the end. I think some of the emotional beats didn't really hit for me too much. I can't really say why some of the emotional beats like didn't really like really. I I think all the characters were almost like too accepting of each other at some points,
I
where
can see that.
they were like almost always immediately willing to be like, "Don't worry, man, I got your back." There wasn't really like a "I don't have your back" section of it. Like in the beginning, for like 10 minutes, they're like not really getting it. Like they're kind of like not getting along a little bit, but like I think there's like kind of a shift where like, oh, we're banding together. Like to me it happens like there's not a friction I felt between the characters a lot of times. And this could just be a me thing. But I just felt like kind of the emotional moments that came near the end, I think plot wise were super interesting. But I think when
Yeah.
some of the characters were sort of like, this is how I feel about a thing, it just didn't really ring true for me because I think maybe not for the characters, but it just seemed like everybody was just getting kind of emotional at some points, which is
That is
fine.
true.
It just felt like it wasn't. I'm not saying true to the characters because I don't know the characters that well. Um, but I kind of wish they had leaned a little bit more into them not getting along. One of the things I actually really liked near the beginning too is that I would say the first two missions, your characters are clearly in the wrong of what they're doing, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I think like in Guardians of the Galaxy, the movies, they're like, oh, they're the good guys who do a little bit of bad things, but like I liked in this game the first two missions, like you're just clearly the bad guy in the situation. And I thought that was
Yeah,
just
no
a really
question asked.
fun, yeah, just a really fun idea. And I kind of wish they had leaned a little bit more into that with the characters themselves, like the characters being bad guys. But no, that's not really the case. They're all really nice people throughout the entire
They all
game.
got
They're
those
all
hearts
really
of
nice.
they all got those hearts of gold underneath all the edges.
Yeah, and I wish they because I thought it was so interesting that because the first two missions they were clear the bad guys. I thought they would be a little bit the characters would be a little bit more bristly than they were. Again, this is like such a minor complaint, but I think it's
Oh
just
yeah.
because the characters are so important to this game. It's just something that kind of stuck out, especially like the back half where they just like just gets a little touchy feely, which is fine, but every character is getting touchy feely. It's like okay,
I could see that. Because I think where I took it differently is, and again, I don't remember the specifics, but I took this as like they'd already clearly been a team for a while. This isn't an origin story.
yeah,
So I think in my mind I was able to look past that because
sure,
we already had that. That would have been Guardians of the Galaxy 0, right? Is where that
yes,
friction happened. Like we got to working together. Now we work together really well. So yeah, we're gonna have our squabbles in the middle. We're gonna have our irritation in the middle here and there a little bit. But at this point in time in their like
I see.
career, I guess, together, in my mind, we're already to the point where I know you're an asshole. I'm gonna deal with you being an asshole, but we're cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I think actually one of the things you mentioned that I thought was super super clever was how they introduced this version of the universe. I think Marvel Spider-Man had an easier job of just like, oh, everybody knows these characters from Marvel, so we can
Yeah.
do like little twists on them immediately. The thing with Guardians of the Galaxy, in which they made very clear in this, is that people's familiarity with it is mostly the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. So
Yep.
what they did is anytime they introduced something new to that universe, they would introduce it first to the frame of you having seen the movies. Um, I don't want to. I guess for an example, I'll try to be vague about it, but they talk about Thanos a few times, and how they frame Thanos in this Guardians universe is different than
Yep.
say the MCU. But they would kind of introduce like, well, no, you know, Gamora is somehow related to Thanos in this one, but Thanos, their relationship's a little different, and Thanos and some of the other like Thanos intention stuff's a little bit different than maybe you're used to from the MCU. But it's cool because it's clearly they're pulling on the MCU really hard, but they're also pulling on the comic books really hard,
Yeah.
and they're marrying the two really really well. Actually, reminds me a lot of Batman Arkham Asylum series that did a really good job of just pulling on all of these threads.
Yeah.
And this one especially, I just felt like it felt like they were really kind of establishing this nice mix and blend of like what you're familiar with, plus some of the weird comic stuff you might not know, and a bunch of weird, cool comic characters. I think the thing that I don't know any of these characters, and I think this is the first time I felt like, oh, this must would be what it's like watching a Marvel movie if you're not familiar with Marvel, because it's like, you know who this guy is, right?
It's coming.
We're bringing in,
it's coming.
Yeah. Or like they hit an Easter egg room where, well, I'll just call it Easter egg room. It's like, here's a bunch of cool stuff from characters. And I was like, I don't know who the F any of these guys are. It's like, I don't know. I'll bet this is really cool for people who are into Guardians.
That room was really cool because there were lots of like references to different things. But
yeah, of course. That I had no idea.
I think you texted me like I got like 2 of the 12, and I was like I was around 8 or 9, so
Yeah.
a little different. But we didn't talk much about the combat. The one thing I do really want to talk about is the huddle, which is like the dumbest and best and most fun thing
That's
ever.
funny, yeah.
And literally, like, it's one of the few times where I caught myself just watching that gauge because it's like, I don't really need this. The game's not super tough, but I just want it because it's fun.
Well, you have to explain what the huddle is.
I'm getting there. So the huddle is basically like your team, like your ultimate team move. So you fill up your bar. When the bar fills, you activate the huddle, where Star-Lord just literally holds up his tape decks, like, get over here! And they all come over. They start, like, yelling stuff at you about, like, how it's going, what's going on. And then you get to pick one option or the other as to, like, how to, like, get the team pumped to finish this battle. Like, how are we going to do this? Let's go, guys. Give your quick motivational speech. And they're just, like, dumb little lines that are going back and forth between them. And when you're done is where, like, Guardians obviously ever since the movies has been like tied completely with like classic rock, old like 80s and 70s music. Yep. And that's where the soundtrack really kicks in. You can kind of like listen to it through a radio on the ship. There's some, obviously some set piece moments that have the music in it, but whenever you do it, it just kicks in. I assume it's random. I never found a pattern, but it seems like it just kicks in like the random sound from the soundtrack. So there's one where I'm in the middle of a giant boss fight, my huddle, come out of the giant boss fight, and the entire rest of the boss fight, never going to give you up is playing. The entire boss fight. And it's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's amazing. And every time it happens, whether it's the stupidest like slow jam song or like this crazy whatever song, as you're going through that battle, the whole time there's just this big old smile on your face because it's just this dumb, fun moment that completely resets this fight. And just it's so fun. It doesn't really do honestly that much. I never felt like I was like, oh man, I'm waiting for this meter just because I need it to finish this fight. It's just I want a fun moment. There it is. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, no, I thought that was like I thought that was a very, it's a fun mechanic. I think this game, when you're saying it's like a fun mechanic, it's like the mechanic itself, like you said, it's not really neat. It's just a fun idea. I think this game just has a bunch of fun ideas of just fun, weird ideas where it's just like, I've never seen that in a game before. Whether it's just like, even just like going through menu options and the characters are making fun of your menu options, or some really cool set piece moments that were just like, this is a set piece I've never seen before, and it looks utterly incredible, and it's such a weird idea. I think just like it leans into like, hey, let's make this fun idea. And the fun idea doesn't necessarily have to be silly. There's a lot of silly, fun ideas, but there's some like really serious fun ideas. There's some really sad fun ideas that I think just the game I think it's one of those things where it's just such seeing a fun, weird idea with a AAA budget is just something that's not that common. I feel like AAA games play it safe, and this feels like one that didn't, and it's probably getting punished for it.
I think it is, but I think on the back end though, it's going to be one of those ones that kind of gets punished from the get go because again, I am like target market for this game, and I skipped, but I think the word of mouth on this game is huge. I mean, literally every time you see a Disney logo or a Marvel logo or a Star Wars logo, text me ugh whenever whenever there's a
Yeah,
Game Awards, E3,
yeah,
whatever, and you played this game. Like
yeah.
literally, you do nothing but complain about licensed games to me, and you
I
played
hate
this.
it.
So
Yeah.
so like I think it's one of those things where it didn't hit it, but I think it's gonna have enough on the back end where if it's just people like jumping in and seeing just how incredible this game is to ultimately, hopefully, fingers crossed, make it a success and we can see something more like this in the future.
I think it is important to point out that the things like we talk about the things we like, but I think the things we didn't talk about too much are the things that aren't particularly great. Like the combat is not super great. It's kind of like
It's
a worse version of Final Fantasy VII's combat.
there.
Um,
I will say though, there was a surprising lack of combat for most of this game. Like there were
sure, that's
there
true.
were there were
Yeah.
good chunks where like I felt like in a 2 hour span I maybe had 3 or 4 fights
Yeah,
between
that's what I'm
time
saying.
on the ship, cutscenes. So I think the combat almost takes a back seat. That's not the point of this game. Like you referenced Telltale before. We talked about Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Like I think it is more in the vein of those where that's more the look that we're going for more than your current Avengers game where it's just no story, who cares? Get out there and beat them robots up.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but like to me, I think the combat what they had was like kind of a neat idea where you're using different skills, but it's like 90% of the way there. A lot of this game I felt was like 90% of the way there, and everything works. So like, okay, let's release it. But I had a lot of tech issues and stuff when I was playing this game, and the combat was like a little sloppy, and I'm like, I'll bet if they had like 3 more months on this thing. So I don't know. It's just like I really like it. I think there's caveat like the things we didn't talk about. I just want to make that clear. Like, hey, this game's not perfect. It's like it's definitely still got its problems. I think it didn't really stick the landing necessarily. I think it makes a great first impression. I don't know if it sticks the landing necessarily for me as far as the story went. Funny. Maybe we'll do a spoiler cast.
Yeah. I would say yes and no to that because there's one part that I think really sticks the landing hard and is fantastic, and then there's another part that I think we could have done without.
Yeah.
If we're gonna do little nitpicks here, Star Wars needs to walk faster. He jogs. He
That is
doesn't
so
walk. He
weird.
doesn't run.
No
he jogs.
dash,
It drives
no
me
run button.
insane.
No
It drove
run
me
button.
insane. The whole like first half of the game, or the first maybe hour or two, I'm just like holding every button on my PS5 controller, going like, which one of these makes you walk just slightly faster? Because there's no, it's this weird like we're not gonna make him walk. We're also not gonna give you the option to run. He's just gonna be light jogging this whole game.
Like you can't slow walk through the parts like you want to kind of slow walk. Like there's a very specific planet area that like don't want to spoil that. It's like a very fun area to slow walk through. But you can't even slow walk. You like you said, you just do like this weird light jog through everything. It's so strange.
But
I mean, yeah, it's a good game. I think it's not
nitpicks
perfect.
aside.
Yeah,
Nitpicks aside, it is a fantastic game. It's something I hope we see more of, and I think it does a cool blend of a lot of different ideas to create something really, really interesting. So hopefully see more like this. But we are Workforce Gaming. You can follow us on Twitter at Workforce Gaming, or subscribe to us wherever you're listening, and we will see you later.
bye.